Good evening, and today I'm here to discuss a very beautiful story, and the title is Mr. and Mrs. Tulliver from class 8 syllabus. And as you know well, this story has been an extract from a very famous novel written by George Eliot, and the title of the novel is The Mill on the Floss. In this story, we find a husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Tulliver, talking to each other. Before we get into it, let us talk about the writer a bit and the person who composed this story. Her name was Mary Ann Evans, and she was born in 1819 and died in 1880. And she is counted as one of the most important figures of English literature when it comes to writing novels and poetry. And George Eliot was her pen name. Her novels were set mostly in provincial England, and she was very famous for her characterization, the way she portrayed her characters. They seem to be quite real and come from among us, that the reader can relate themselves to them very easily. So this is one of the strongest features of her writing, and many important works she has contributed to literature. A few of them are Silas Marner, Daniel Deronda, Middlemarch, The Mill on the Floss. So these are some important works. In this story, we find the story opens with Mr. and Mrs. Tulliver talking to each other about their son Tom's education. They have got two children, Tom and Maggie, and Tom recently has been taken out of an academy which Mr. Tulliver was not satisfied with, because he felt the school had cheated him when it came to the quality of education. So he is just trying to find a very good school for Tom, and that's why he's talking to his wife. The wife says that she would like to invite her sisters also for a dinner, and where Mr. Tulliver could ask their opinion regarding this, at which Mr. Tulliver gets very angry, and he says that for his own children's education he would not like to ask anybody else. And the way he talks, it offends Mrs. Tulliver, but she says she knows it was his habit to talk like that when it came to talking about her family, because them he doesn't consider fit enough to give opinion on such an important subject, because he thinks they are dull-witted or less intelligent than his own side. Then Mrs. Tulliver says that he would not like Tom to go far away. Going to a good school is okay, but she would not consent to Tom being sent to a school far away, because if he stays near, she would find herself in a position to take care of him, to just supply him some eatables, to wash his clothes at times, and provide all the care that is, a bit motherly in nature. Mr. Tulliver, the father, assures her that he is also in no mood to send Tom too far away, but these thoughts of the mother should not prove a hindrance in the way to provide Tom a good education. And then he just stands up and puts his hands in the pockets of his breeches, like he would find some suggestion over there, and apparently he is not disappointed, because he gets an idea, and he tells his wife that he would like to ask Riley about where he should put Tom. Riley is a person who is quite friendly to Mr. Tulliver, and he is very impressed with Riley, because Riley is highly educated, sophisticated, and he talks big. He has got a large vocabulary. He is a good arbitrator, a good auctioneer, a good valuer, and a good businessman also. So he wants Tom to be like him. He adores Riley rather. So he thinks he would ask him about a good school, because he himself is exposed to such things, and he must be in a position to talk about a good school. Just then he says that he is doubtful about Tom's, it means he is just suspicious, and he doubts whether Tom has got the right kind of merit to receive that kind of sophisticated education. And he expresses his disappointment that Tom has taken after the family of his mother, who are less intelligent or simpletons, as he says. Mrs. Tulliver again gets offended, and she again reprimands him for this. And Mr. Tulliver keeps talking about his daughter Maggie, whom he thinks she has taken after his family side, and that's why she is very intelligent and strong and independent, and she reads very well. He himself compliments her reading, as he says she reads almost as well as a parson. Mrs. Tulliver gets a chance to retaliate, and she says that no, she's almost as dull and half-witted, because sometimes she sends Maggie upstairs to fetch something, and by the time she reaches upstairs, she forgets what she has been asked to bring from there, and she sits over there, her hair disheveled, and sings some nonsense songs. Okay, so, and she stands up because she's concerned about Maggie's safety, and he feels that she might tumble in the river Floss because she keeps roaming about the bank of the river Floss carelessly. And she calls Maggie. Just then she enters, and by the time she enters, she reaches upstairs. But the mother finds Maggie with her hair disheveled and not in a very good shape, and she just rebukes her a bit and asks her to be like a little lady, nice and sophisticated, and she wants her to get her hair combed, and she also wants her to do a little patchwork upstairs, which she has got from the neighborhood. But Maggie has some other thought. She is independent, unmanageable, wild by nature, and she doesn't want to do such foolish things. And she considers the patchwork just an unimportant business where they cut the clothes apart, then sew them together again. So this is quite nonsense, I think, in her view. And seeing and just hearing what the girl says, the father, Mr. Tulliver, he laughs audibly, which further irritates the mother, Mrs. Tulliver, and she says that it was he who was spoiling the daughter, and the sisters would think that perhaps she was responsible for it, but it was the father who did so, and thus the story comes to an end. We find that Mr. Tulliver has a lot of fancy opinion about his daughter, whom he thinks she is very intelligent and she is a very good reader. At the same time, he thinks that her intelligence counts little, because after all she is a girl and she would not be able to prove it in the world. So thus this story portrays the position of women in the society of England in that era, that women were just in assistance, or you can say in the second grade role, you can say, a role of an extra or assistant in the society. It was a male dominated society, patriarchal in nature, and women and their opinion were not regarded much, and they were simply compelled to take care of the home itself. Their reading and all those skills which they could develop hardly had any importance. And wherever the families are, they behave and think almost the same way, whether it is India or England or America or anywhere. As we find here in our country too, the husband and wife keep quarreling over their families, and the wife talks his husband's families to be inferior. Likewise, the husband does the same. The same we find happening in the story Mr. and Mrs. Tulliver too. And the way they converse about different things, and that brings the humor on the surface, and that's really a great story. And what I really love about the story is the way the characters have been portrayed, how intelligently and how realistically at the same time. They seem to have come from among us. The readers can very easily relate themselves to the characters, and that is the beauty of a writer. He makes the pieces he or she writes very realistic and very close to the reader's imagination. So I hope you might have understood the story, and you can read the story yourself, and there you can have a better view of the things. Thank you very much for watching this story.